Hey, you guys, thanks for listening in to this episode on today of Tips with T. I have Miss Trudy with us. Hey, Miss Trudy, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Well, great. Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I am a real estate agent and team leader of the True That Can Sell That team with Keller Williams Atlantic Partners in Northeast Florida. And so I am the rainmaker for the team. So that means my primary role is business development. But I work mostly with residential real estate in Northeast Florida. So Northeast Florida is a really large area geographically. So that's a little different. That I work with Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Palm Coast, and beyond.
Awesome. So, how was your entrepreneurship journey for you?
Yeah. So it started really, a while ago. I mean, I when I was in college, I was a criminal justice major, and my plan was to really go into the FBI. But while I was in school, I worked for a title company, and I was doing closings, and got a lot of experience in that. And so, right out of college, I had an interview with the Public Defender's Office here and with a bank called First Union National Bank. And the bank offered me about $6,000 more a year to underwrite loans, mortgage loans for them. And so that's where I went. The FBI was a distant memory. But that was really where my career path started. So title background, mortgage lending background, I ended up running large fulfillment operations centers for big banks like Wachovia, which later became Wells Fargo, um, Countrywide, which later became Bank of America, and Chase. And so I had a great deal of experience running these large operations for big banks. And I got incredible training and incredible mentorship in that process. So in 2015, when Bank of America decided to relocate their fulfillment operation centers from my area, I decided it was the time to get into real estate sales. And so I had this great training in operations management and knew everything really there was to know about residential real estate sales, but I knew nothing about business development. Never had to really, give it much of a thought. So in 2015, I got my real estate license, and then what, right? It's like, okay, I'm ready, and was really, ready for the market to come to me. But I'll tell you, I had some really good mentors, and I was humble enough, I think, to listen and realize that it's not all going to, I can't just sit and hope that it's going to land in my lap. I really had to go out and do things. And those things for me really were just fill up the calendar. Every Monday morning I'd wake up and look at my calendar. And if I had blank spots in the calendar, I would just try and find things to add to that. And some of that was networking meetings or meetup groups, or sometimes it was just going to model homes and getting to know the sales reps and more about the builders. So I tried a lot of everything, in the early days, just to meet more people and to have my calendar filled up, really. So that's how it got started.
Awesome. So since you're in the real estate industry, what with this pandemic and stuff going on, what are some changes that you have noticed within the industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think like so many other businesses or other industries, the pandemic accelerated the path that we were already on, right? So if a business was floundering before the pandemic, it probably wasn't getting stronger and better during the pandemic. If a business was, just at the tipping point of success, and it provided some value to consumers in their home, well, there you go. Uber Eats and Instacart and things like that all just exploded, right? Well, they were already introduced. And so before the pandemic. And so we experienced a little bit of that in real estate, right? So for example, mortgage lenders, they were really starting to use electronic delivery systems for their documents a lot prior to the pandemic. During the pandemic, we started seeing lenders really releasing closing packages 24 hours ahead of time to the consumer, which allowed them to review the documents ahead of time and then have a much quicker closing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, that's something that's really, really helped us. The other thing that, we're seeing, of course, in real estate is the issues that have come about because of supply and demand. So we have been in a strong seller's market since about 2015. So, this super sellers market that we ended up in we were already headed in that direction. In fact, in my market in 2019, no, I'm sorry, in January of 2020, we had less than 2 months of inventory in the market. That's in January of 2020 before we went into quarantine. And so what ended up happening, and the reason we were in that really is because builders haven't been able to keep up with the housing demands. We have two very large generations that are entering the home buying market in big ways, right? And in 2000 and in the early 2000s, just prior to the mortgage meltdown, you really only had boomers and Gen X in the market. The silent generation, not at all interested in downsizing. They're staying in their home. But boomers and Gen X were really buying. Well, boomers and Gen X are still buying. And now we have millennials and Gen Z in the market. And those are two very large generations. Gen X is about 22 million less than any other generation. So we now have four, pretty decent sized generations that are actively in the market. And what we're seeing from the latest census results are that people stay in their home for an average of 7 years. So people move and continue to move. And we just have so many people that are now entering the market that we've seen both rentals and new home sales and resales. There's just not enough. There's not enough supply to keep up with the demand. And so and of course, affordability is pretty good. So, there's no reason for a new home buyer to not be in the market, right? With rates being as low as they are. So that's really what we've seen in the real estate market. And of course, all of the creative things that have come about to make it easier for both buyers and sellers are the things that, we as real estate professionals are really, I think we're more tasked with being able to inform the consumer on what their options are, maybe even more so than helping people find a home, right? So finding a home isn't nearly as difficult as it was maybe 15, 20 years ago. But now you can find the home. What do you do? Well, what are the next steps? How do you ensure you get there? And those bidding wars and all of the things that we saw in the pandemic are not necessarily going to go away quickly. So having a real estate professional, guide you and inform you is super important. And that has really changed. The realtor 15, 20 years ago was really about helping you find a home. And that's not as much of the need in a real estate professional these days. So.
Yeah. So I know when we were talking before, you said you had noticed a lot of some changes with like the instant buyer and the iBuyer. So explain to us explain to us what that is and how is that going to change. And I know that was kind of going along with Zillow. So how is that affecting Zillow and stuff like that?
Yeah, when you and I first spoke, I think Zillow had just made a major announcement that they were actually exiting the instant buyer platform, which they really introduced. So let me take a step back and explain. So it's an iBuyer, or an instant buyer is a buyer that is usually it's a corporate buyer that will make a fair market offer to a seller that has very few strings attached to it. So what I mean by that is it's a kind of a hassle-free way of selling a home. You the instant buyer will make an offer based on some information that you provide to that buyer, and it's usually a very brief questionnaire that you fill out online, and you might take some pictures of the home, and based on that information the instant buyer will provide you an offer. And if you if the terms of the offer agree with you, then the next step is they have somebody come in and do a brief inspection of the home. And as long as everything is fairly consistent with what you revealed in the offer process, that's it. They're ready at that point. They're ready to buy, and that closing can happen as quickly as 2 weeks or as long as 90 days. And so it's nice for an owner. It's a great option for an owner who maybe has a house in mind, but they haven't sold their house. So they want to, and new construction is also a really, popular, it's a real popular way of managing a new construction situation, right? So you have flexibility in the closing date. You don't have a buyer that's breathing down your neck, and it's cash. And so a cash offer has always got fewer contingencies associated with it. And so it's more appealing when you're going to make an offer on the next home, right? So a lot of really, nice things about instant buyer. That started in about 2017. So there's Zillow Offers is an instant buyer. Open Door is an instant buyer. OfferPad. Those are the top three iBuyers in the marketplace right now. And so they had a little bit of success in 2017, 2018, started gaining a little bit of popularity in 2019. They started moving into other markets because really you only see instant buyers in major markets. So they're not everywhere. We started seeing a little bit more activity. In the early days of the pandemic, they stopped buying, and then they started buying. And this summer, what started happening was something really crazy. So an instant buyer usually makes a fair market offer, but it's not the top dollar. So if you really want to maximize your profit, you're going to go with a traditional sale, right? You're going to put it on the market, have some open houses, have some showings, and try to get as many offers as you possibly can. So an instant buyer, because it was convenient, it was not going to be maybe the highest price. It'd be a fair price, but not the highest price, because they have to turn around and sell it, right? And it usually came with about a 14% charge associated with it. So all of their fees and what they, so that's a little bit higher too, expense wise, than what you would normally see with a traditional sale, but it's super convenient. So this summer though, we started noticing that the iBuyers, particularly Zillow and Open Door, started splashing incredible amounts of money at these offers. And I mean, ridiculous amounts of money. I think I shared with you, I had bought a home in January of 2020. And in June, I got an offer $100,000 more on that home from an iBuyer. And so, this is that's the kind of money that really makes iBuying the only option. I mean, you wouldn't get that on the traditional market. They were offering way more than what the market was, and the market's super crazy now anyway, but they were even crazier. And so we really couldn't quite figure out what the game plan was and how they were going to make that work. And so the answer is they weren't going to make it work. I mean, they did this in June, July, August, maybe through September. And then in October, Zillow said, oh, we're not going to buy any more for the rest of the year. We're going to take a time out. And then, in late October, early November, then Zillow announced that just before its earnings call, announced that they were exiting instant buying entirely forever and laying off 25% of its workforce. So, so there's been a lot of, a turmoil in that segment, but it's still a viable segment. It's still around. Open Door is still around. OfferPad is open around. I work for my brokerage is Keller Williams, and we do have an instant buyer offering as well. And so it is still a nice option, and it's a good option if you're looking for convenience and a stronger cash offer than you would get from a private investor. But you're not going to get the crazy offers that they were making over the summer.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Trudy, for coming on and telling us about the tips about the instant buyer when it comes to buying a home. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share your social media handles so you can tell our listeners how they can get in contact with you if they would like to. So Miss Trudy, tell us how we can get in contact with you.
All right. Well, you can see, I'm the team leader of the True Can Sell That team. So our social media handles are all, around that hashtag True Can Sell That. So if you Google just True Can Sell That, you are going to find me. If you can't remember these or don't write them down, just Google True Can Sell That, and you will get all of our social media connections. And we look forward to connecting with anyone who has any questions about real estate, really anywhere in Northeast Florida. I do have great partnerships throughout the country. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about instant buyers, about all of the different ways that you can conveniently buy and sell a home in America.
Awesome. And if you guys want to get in contact with me, feel free to do so. My number is 910-317-0396. You can shoot me an email at contact@mjfinancial.biz. You can schedule a consultation on www.mjfinancial.biz. You can find the episode on Anchor, you guys, and you can also find the playback for this video on the YouTube channel as well. So thank you once again, Miss Trudy, for being on the show today. I highly appreciate you.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And all right, you guys, we will see you on the next episode of Tips with T.